What's up? This is the Oppo A57 and this is a gorgeous looking smartphone from Oppo, and this is really looking very good in this matte black color, which is Oppo calling the glowing black. So now let's review this device. Before we start our video, let's give a quick shout out to our today's sponsor, Mars2. Mars2 is a group of smartphone shops located at the 3rd floor of Satarakan complex in Kumilla. No matter which smartphone you need, they have all of the brands covered. You can buy your desired smartphone from them at a fair price. Details about them are in the description below. So first, let's talk about the design and aesthetic of this phone. As I mentioned earlier, this is really a gorgeous looking smartphone. Like in terms of Oppo and Vivo, their phones looks really good. I have earlier reviewed the Oppo F21 Pro. You can check it on this like button after the video, of course. That was really a gorgeous looking smartphone, and this one is a budget segment smartphone, but this still looks pretty gorgeous. Talking about the build quality, this thing is entirely made out of plastic except for the front, that is glass obviously. There is a slight lack of build quality in this smartphone, like the skin side. This doesn't blend pretty good, but other than that, there is not much to complain about the build quality for this price segment. This really feels very good on hand and premium also. I really love this matte black color, which Oppo is calling the glowing black. There is also a glowing green color, which is not very good looking in my opinion, but it's subjective. We have talked about the gorgeousness of the back panel and the side obviously, but everything flips as you flip the phone. There is a ugly looking V-notch on the top of this phone, which is not that great in my opinion. Now for the display, this thing has a 720p 60Hz display, which is an LCD panel, and display is quite okay, I would say. The max brightness is quite high, and the colors are good and saturated, and this would do just okay in the broad daylight. In terms of ports and I/O, in the left side it has the SIM tray, which is a triple slot where you can use one SD card with 2 other 4G SIM cards simultaneously, and below that there is the volume rockers, 2 separate buttons, which is a nice touch. On the bottom we have the beloved headphone jack, the main microphone, an USB-C connector, USB-C, and the main speaker grill. On the right we have the power button, and on the top we have nothing, no secondary microphone or no secondary noise cancellation microphone is there. That's one thing is good, that this thing features a stereo speaker. The top earpiece acts as a speaker while playing media, so that's a really nice touch on this price segment. Now once you hold this phone on your hand, you will feel that this thing is pretty lightweight. This thing weighs only about 187 grams, which is really great for hands. I mean, for the prolonged using session, this thing is really good. Now our unit is the 4G unit, and in Bangladesh Oppo is launching only the 4G one, but there is a 5G version of it available, which features a better chipset. But the 4G variant has packed up a MediaTek Helio G35 chipset, which is not a very great one. We'll talk about that later. This thing priced in Mars2 at 17,990 TKs, which is roughly 18,000 TKs. Now for the 4G version, there is 3 or 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 and 120 gigabytes for the internal storage. Now the internal storage type is the eMMC 5.1, which is not very great, but considered it's a budget segment smartphone, you can just leave it. Now in this beautiful camera bump, it houses 2 cameras, one of which is the main sensor, another one is the not very usable depth sensor. The main sensor is a 13 megapixel shooter, and we'll be talking about that in the image samples. So let's have a look at the image and the video samples coming out of this main sensor. Now in the camera, by default, when you'll be clicking photos, you'll notice some shutter lag. That is because there is a mode called the dazzling color, and it's on by default. In this mode, the image takes a little bit more to process and produces slightly punchier color. If you keep it on, there will be almost no shutter lag, but you won't like the image after turning it off. But with this mode off, the images are quite a bit washed out, so you won't like that if you turn it off. The daytime image samples coming out of this Oppo A57 is really good. I like how the images came out. The dynamic range is also good, not that great, but it's doable. But the one thing is lacking is that the colors are not that punchy. I would like to have the punchy colors, but this is not present here. In terms of portrait mode shot, I like the bokeh style and the bokeh quality, and there is a bit of depth in the bokeh, so that's okay. It doesn't have any ultra wide camera or the telephoto camera, but I am impressed how the zoomed in shot came out in this thing. Like you can go 2x and 5x, maximum 5x zoom with this camera, but I am really impressed how they came for this price segment. What this thing really lacks is the nighttime shots. The image sensor isn't that big, so it lacks in the nighttime shots. In dark environment, it produces a lot of noise and the images are not that sharp enough. It does have a dedicated night mode, which does helps with the condition. I would say for the nighttime shot, it does just an okay quality job. Now in terms of video, it can record only 1080p videos at 30 fps. For video, there is almost no image stabilization, as you might see. This thing also has a 8 megapixel selfie camera on the V notch, which does a okay quality job. You can check the image samples. Now in terms of performance, the MediaTek Helio G35 is not a performance-focused chipset, and this is not very efficient chipset with 12 nanometer threads. Now the clock speed is good, but in day-to-day tasks like opening social media apps and cruising through the UI, this thing is just okay, but I have seen lags and stuttering regularly on this UI. That's a bummer, and we have also done some benchmark tests. Let's look at the score. This thing packs up a 5000 mAh battery, which is huge. Consider that this weighs only 187 grams, and this is not a very thick phone. The 5000 mAh battery is welcome, and the battery life here is really great. You can't kill this phone in one day, no way. Now for the software side, this thing features the ColorOS 12.1 based on Android 12, which is, I would say, really good. This thing packs up some bloatwares, but the entire UI is almost clean, and I would say ColorOS is a lot more better than previous ColorOS. I like a lot of sneak peeks of the ColorOS. Like if you are holding this phone in the horizontal mode, then you pull out the notification slider. Now depending on which part you are pulling the notification slider, this thing opens the notification slider on that side. You can choose it on the right, you can choose it on the left, and you can also pull it from the center, and the notification slider will be there. I think many other companies should apply it in their skins, so that's a very welcome thing on this new ColorOS. For the security, this thing has the physical fingerprint reader on the power button, which is not my favorite position for a fingerprint reader, because this thing actually limits the usage of the power button, but the fingerprint is quite fast and accurate. It sometimes misses, but it's just okay. So what is my final verdict about this Oppo A57? Like, this thing is not meant for the heavy users or the hardcore user or the power users, like who uses their phones pretty hard, and also not for gamers or performance seekers. If you are a really basic user, like you make some phone calls and cruise through the social media apps and stuff like that, this thing is just okay. The camera is not that impressive, but it's just okay for most of the people, I would say. But the camera is not that impressive, I would say. So if you need a better camera, I guess this is not your phone. So that's all for this Oppo A57. If you want to make any purchase, please consider Mars 2. Links in the description below. See you soon with some interesting videos. Till then, stay good, and keep doing incredible things. And yes, of course, keep watching Incredible Victor.